I'm Amanda Leitner, and welcome to Rochester Rising, where we amplify the stories of Rochester entrepreneurs. Welcome to episode 142 of the podcast today. So today on the show, we had the great pleasure to sit down and chat with Shari Mukherjee. Shari is the mastermind behind the food blog Spiced Up Mom, and she is also a remaining contestant on season 10 of MasterChef on Fox. And you can catch the next episode of MasterChef where Shari enters into the top 7 tonight on Fox at 7 p.m. Central Time. So on the podcast today, we talk about how marrying her husband 10 years ago sparked a passion in Shari to learn traditional Indian cooking. We talk about her experience with food blogging and her journey to learn cooking. We, of course, talk about some of her worst cooking disasters and the value of learning from mistakes and making mistakes. We talk about her many food blogs that she's done over the years, including My Fancy Pantry and her latest food blog, Spiced Up Mom, which she uses to share her food learning experiences. And we also talk about her current transition more to Instagram from the blog. And of course, we talk about her decision to try out for season 10 of Fox's MasterChef and her journey into the top 7 and the friendships she's created through MasterChef. Shari says this experience on MasterChef has taught her that she can do hard things. We also chat about how she's dealing with negative feedback from the show and how MasterChef has fueled her progression as an individual. And lastly, we wrap up the show today talking about what we can expect from Shari in the future. All right, so now on to the podcast with Shari Mukherjee of Spiced Up Mom and season 10 of MasterChef. Well, thanks for being here today, Shari. I appreciate it. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I think this will be a super fun podcast. You have a lot of different hats you wear and a lot of different things from being a mom of 2 boys, right?
Yep, 2 boys.
2 and 4. Self-taught chef and food blogger with Spiced Up Mom. And, well, so far in the top 10 of MasterChef season 10.
Yeah, right now I'm top 7, so moving on up, hopefully.
Yeah. No, and it's super exciting to watch you, progressing through that and, representing Minnesota and making some wild rice on MasterChef. So
yeah, that was a tricky one. I was determined to do it, but cooking wild rice, I think it was like 45 minutes. So that was, if it didn't turn out, I probably would have went home.
Yeah, wild rice is, a little bit of a beast of a dish.
Yes.
So I wanted to start off asking you about your passion for cooking and really your passion for learning authentic Indian dishes and where that came or why you were so interested in learning that particular style of cooking.
Sure. So 10 years ago, about 10 and a half years ago now, actually, I married my husband, and he is actually Indian. So he's from India. He was raised in Mumbai. His parents are Bengali, so they're from the Kolkata area. And, intercultural relationships are difficult. I think they're not difficult so much in the beginning, but as you keep going year after year, it becomes more and more difficult, especially when you add in children to the mix. And so when we were, getting married, I guess obviously and understandably, his parents had, some concerns because he was going to marry this girl that didn't have the same culture as him, the different religion as him. Everything was different. And they were worried that he may lose some of his, his Indianness and his culture. And I just became determined to prove that that wasn't going to happen, that, he could still continue to eat Indian food and enjoy those things, even though he was married to me. I also learned it was a really great way to, bond and kind of maybe even try to impress his mom, which is big. I mean, if you love your husband a lot, your husband really loves his mom. So you don't want that stress of fighting with his mom all the time. So somebody had to give, and I just thought this will be a good way. So I couldn't cook anything. I truly had only eaten curry maybe once in my life before meeting my husband. And that was in my mid-20s, or early 20s, not mid-20s. And so I didn't have a lot to base it on. I just went on the internet and looked up recipes and started practicing.
I think that's awesome. I was watching, I think it was the Jason's show. I'm kind of blanking right now. Where you were saying that, like you said now, like 10 years ago, you really didn't cook that much. And like as a joke, your husband wanted to enter you in worst cooks in America.
Yeah, and that's not even a joke. Like, that's true. He did that. He did that. And we have the email to prove it. And it was, it's not like it really mattered to him. He didn't care if I could really cook. I think he would have liked me to cook, but it was never a point of contention between us. But I just really wanted to prove them all wrong, that I can learn this.
Yeah, no, and I think like you said, like when you don't grow up with it and you're really not surrounded by authentic Indian cooking in southeastern Minnesota, it's really hard to know and compare to, the standard of where is this supposed to go and what does this supposed to taste like? What does it look like? So I wanted to ask you, like, how do you, 10 years ago, I don't know, YouTube probably wasn't that active. So how do you learn these things?
So YouTube, there wasn't a lot on YouTube back then. I started a food blog to kind of, put what I was learning. So a lot of the recipes that are on there are quite old. They're maybe not the same recipes I use now, but they're good starting points. The library had like 2 books on Indian food.
Really?
I mean, there was really nothing. You could Google and there was barely anything. It's not like it is nowadays where you can just Google or Pinterest or do all of that. I mean, there was none of that when I was learning, and most of the blogs didn't even have pictures. So you still didn't know what it was supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cooking is really, really an art and really a difficult acquired skill, I think, for sure. And I think you're so spot on, connecting to your husband's culture and his heritage, because food really, kind of takes you there, and those.
Well, and that's how in India it's so important. Tradition is so important and food is so important. Food is love. I mean, I think it's like that in most cultures, but maybe in America we've gotten away from that a little bit. And I think some of it is because we're from so many different areas that it's really hard to form that connection, where in India, you could talk about a particular dish, and although it'll be of different variations throughout the country, probably everybody has heard of it or tried it, Where here, if I talk about some Southern dish, I mean, somebody here in Minnesota may never, like a hush puppy. I didn't know what a hush puppy was until I went on the show. Like, I had no idea, Yeah,
no, it's all... Yeah, I think it's just a great way. We have so many memories from when we're younger, and I think that a lot of the times comes through food, like even just smelling something that was so familiar, it takes you back so quickly.
Yeah.
So I think when we're all learning, I didn't really learn to cook until I was in college, because like I never just had to beyond microwaving and doing eggs. So do you have any worst cooking disaster stories to share, and maybe some best cooking?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have a lot. When you learn and you literally have I can't say that I never cooked, because growing up I would cook things, but it was always very much like, let's make a goulash, or let's make, dump everything in the slow cooker and call it a day. It was never like cooking these really nice, like pretty meals, ever. And definitely not cooking a curry. So I think there's been a lot of mistakes, but probably some of the worst were back when I got an Indian cookbook, because you don't really know what to expect from cookbooks. And I've learned that learning to cook Indian food from a cookbook is difficult. Like I just haven't found a good one that's suited for beginners. That's just really, this is what you need to know, and we're going to tell you everything. And so I think one time I was making like a lamb dish, and it called for like 12 tablespoons of ghee to put in before you put the lamb. By the time my curry was done, it was literally like a probably a half an inch of like fat on top of the curry. I mean, it was just bad. There were a lot of things I didn't know about. I didn't know how to temper spices.
I have no idea what that is.
Yeah. So tempering means you're basically putting them into the oil so they can release, or, they can release their flavor. And I didn't know that I would need to do that. So there were a lot of times when we would eat like raw spices in your curries, which is a big, I mean, it was just a lot of learning,
Yeah, no, that reminds me of oh my God, there were some horrible things that we did. Even, the beginning of my relationship with my husband now. And, because when you're by yourself, you'll pretty much eat anything that you make. And there were a lot of times we'd go get pizza because it was like so bad. Like I remember a mac and cheese, like homemade mac and cheese is a lot harder than people think. Like I think I used like skim milk or something, and it was just
curdled
it was just like a ball of soup. It was so gross. Oh my God. And just the cheese is just like hardened. It was disgusting.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of little tips. And if you don't make those mistakes though, that's how you learn. Like I always embrace my mistakes, and I always say, if I make this mistake now, hopefully I won't make it again. Like I'm just going to learn from that.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think that's, a lot of when you're building a business and stuff too, like putting yourself out there and trying new techniques, sometimes we're afraid to like mess up, but really if you don't do it and you do something that's simple, then you never get any further.
If you don't fail, you won't succeed. So, I mean, you have to fail to find success, I think.
Totally. Just don't burn your kitchen down or anything like that, or poison yourself. That is the risk with cooking.
I mean, look at this though. Like I couldn't cook 10 years ago, and now I'm on MasterChef. Yeah. So it's kind of...
Exactly. Exactly. So it's dedication and
a lot of failure.
A lot of failure. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about your Spiced Up Mom blog. So I was scrolling through in it looked like you started in 2011?
So, kind of. I've had a few different blogs. The earlier one was called My Fancy Pantry. And that one, I want to say, started around 2007.
Okay, so it's been you've been consistently doing this.
Well, neglectfully. You've
been putting something out at least once every couple months.
Yeah, I mean, for a long time. And even before that, I had a different blog. But I really liked blogging. I like sharing what I'm learning. And I think the reason why my blog is so neglected nowadays is because I've found Instagram. Instagram's just a little bit easier. It's easier to share on. I feel like your audience gets the information right away. It's easier.
Yeah, and I think with food too, it's so visual. Like you were saying, when you're looking at stuff like a couple years ago and there's no photos with it, you have nothing to compare it to, and you just get drawn into that. But I do think blogs provide and Instagram now, I mean, if we fast forward, 8 years or so, provide like a lot of opportunity for connection and growth. So did you find that with, Spiced Up Mom and your previous blog? Like, did it lead to opportunities locally or collaborations?
So when I was doing My Fancy Pantry, I actually was quite successful with it. I was getting, on average, every day would be about 10 to 20,000 page views. I mean,
That's a lot.
I have some recipes on there that still to this day get over, without me updating in years, that blog probably still gets at least 2,000 page views a day. And some of the recipes have even hit over 1 million page views. So I do have some really, really good traction on there. I think some of that was just figuring out Google at the time.
Sure.
A lot of that has changed now. So if I use the same tactics now that I used then, it doesn't work quite the same. But yeah, when I was doing My Fancy Pantry, I would get a lot of collaborations. And this is when this was kind of starting, companies reaching out to me. And back then I didn't realize that you could actually charge money to companies for that. And that's how food bloggers make money. I mean, food blogging is a huge business.
Oh, yeah.
I'm talking within 2 years, some food bloggers, if they really put their all into it, they're quitting their full-time jobs and they're making 6 figures. It's not, it's not just putting a recipe out and whatever. But back then companies would contact me and I would make recipes for them for free, and they would just give me a product. And now I'm thinking, what was I doing?
Well, it's a hard thing to learn. And, I think a lot of things go back to community. Unless you like have someone that you know and are friends with doing it, then you don't know, or you don't think. And
it was so new back then. I don't even know that the companies knew that they should actually be paying us for this stuff.
That's probably very true.
Yeah, like I remember this particular bread company that was working with me, and literally like once a month I would get a ginormous box of bread on my doorstep. And like we don't even eat that much bread, so
nobody can.
No, and I was starting to feel just overwhelmed, like having to make recipes for this company, and they were like paying me in bread, and I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Bread doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I think it's just a really interesting opportunity, like you were saying, to, get free stuff, create new things, and then get paid to do, like, follow a passion.
Yeah.
It's a super cool opportunity. And yeah, now I agree. We've kind of switched over to Instagram and a lot of that stuff because it's just more visual and easier.
And the same sort of thing happens on Instagram nowadays too. Yeah. So companies reach out to you, and you can, they'll send you product, and typically now they'll pay you money as well. So yeah, it's kind of neat. It's fun to see how it's evolving. I mean, back then when these companies were sending me stuff, and I'm talking, this is probably eight years ago. So not really a whole lot of people to ask like what's normal, because it was new.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. So I wanted to transition to talking about MasterChef. So you're in the top 7 of season 10. Mm-hmm. Like we were talking a little bit in the beginning, it's hugely risky to, even try out for this thing because, first of all, it's to yourself, making yourself vulnerable, putting you out there, if you get on. If you don't get on, then your family, if you do, like we were talking about, you could spend weeks away from home and responsibilities. So there's so much risk involved, including, when you do make it on the show and receiving all the feedback, whether it's in person or through all the various channels that people seem to be able to contact us with these days. Yes. But I guess first off, starting out in the beginning, like I said, it's makes you vulnerable to try out. So why did you feel that this was the time to try out for MasterChef?
So I think my story starts back to that 10 years prior where we were talking about my husband applying me for Worst Cooks in America. I had refused to go on the show. We had some emails, producers trying to reach out to us, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And so we bought our house, and we put the TV, in the house after we bought it, turned it on, and it happened to be MasterChef, the very first season of MasterChef. And at that time I was learning to cook. I was newly blogging. And so I was really interested in food shows, and there weren't a whole lot on at the time. I mean, you had Food Network, but nothing like this,
No.
So I watched it, and I told my husband after seeing that episode, I was like, that's the show I'm going to be on. So it's kind of funny. We watched the first maybe 4 seasons, and then life got busy and kind of forgot about it. And it just so happened that last summer I happened to turn on the TV, and I caught like the finale of last season. And I just thought to myself, I wonder if they're casting. It kind of reminded me of my previous dream, I guess you could call it. So I wondered if they were casting, and I Googled it, and I went to their website, and I didn't see anything posted, but I just followed it. And literally 2 days later in my Facebook feed, it popped up that MasterChef was casting and that the first city they were coming to was Minneapolis.
So it's like fate.
Yeah. I mean, it felt very serendipitous. And so I was like, I have to go. Like, I have to. And in my head, I had told myself, I just want to try out. Like, I think I can cook. I think I'm a good cook. Confidence is always something, I struggle with a little bit. So like, I may really like the food, but if somebody eats your food, like I want to know, do you like the food? And most people won't really tell you.
Right.
And so just getting that confidence, I wanted that feedback. And so I went, and it was crazy scary. I mean, even at that point, because you literally don't know what to expect, and you get there and there's people waiting, and you don't know who's who. Like, and at that time I know nothing about TV. I've never actually dreamed about like being on TV. Like, I just wanted the feedback. I wanted to meet Gordon Ramsay and
Sure.
see what he had to say.
Absolutely.
You know? And at that point, I wanted an apron. I'm not going to lie, but I just wanted that feedback. And so when we got there, and there's all these people, and you don't know who's who. There's producers walking around, and there's culinary team, and I don't know anybody. So we walk in, and you bring a dish. And they give you like 2 to 3 minutes, I don't remember exactly what it was, to plate the dish.
Okay.
And then they taste it and they, go from there.
Mm-hmm. Sounds, extremely intimidating.
It really was. This was the first year that Chef Ramsay sent his personal culinary team as well. So they were really looking for people that knew food. And so I feel very grateful that I was chosen.
Yeah, I think it's, the opportunity in a lifetime. It just doesn't fall into place.
I mean, I was telling Chef Gordon a couple episodes back, they aired a little clip of us and we were talking, and I told him that it just felt like a dream to even be here and to meet him and to learn from him. I mean, how many people, especially in Minnesota, there's only been 2 of us,
really?
2 adults in 10 years that have gotten an apron. So to learn from Chef Ramsay, it's literally a dream.
Yeah, it just doesn't happen. You're on the show, you're learning from Gordon Ramsay and everyone else. But what has been so far one of your most favorite experiences, and what's been kind of one of the worst experiences you've had from this show? Not even if it's not, doesn't have to be directly on the show, but just from the whole experience.
Oh, sure. I think one of the best experiences was just meeting the people. And I'm meaning the cast, my other co-competitors, as well as the crew, the producers. It's funny how you just really create good friendships from these people. I feel extremely blessed to have met so many of these people along this whole, I guess you can call it a journey. And that includes, Chef Ramsay. I mean, that's like I said, that's like a dream. And Joe Bastianich, Aron Sanchez, I've been watching him since I was a kid. So I find that, I was probably more excited to meet Chef Aron than anybody. The whole experience was really exciting. And I think the greatest takeaway for me, and probably the best thing of the experience, was that I learned that I can do hard things. So when for an example, cooking on the Jason show, that was a live segment, right? So you go there, and normally I probably would have been really nervous, but I just kept telling myself, I did a lot of hard things this year, a lot of hard, scary things. I put myself out there. On international television, it's in 192 countries. So I can do hard things. And I think that's important to be successful, especially in something like this, food business, whatever, competition, if that's what you want to do. You have to know that you can do hard things, and you're going to be okay. Yeah,
I think a lot of our self-doubt holds us back a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And you were saying you've literally been through a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, I cooked knowing that Chef Ramsay, I cooked my signature dish that I it's something I created myself after a trip to India. I sat at my stove and made this recipe myself, right? I put that in front of him knowing that he could hate it.
Yeah.
He could hate it. I mean, that's a scary thought, to know that something you created could literally be spit out on national television. That's scary.
Yeah, that is terrifying.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you too, we were talking about, you get a lot of feedback, a lot of criticism, both in person, and through all these ways people contact you. Yeah. So how do you deal with that and move beyond it?
I think that's hard. It's hard because at the end of the day, we're real people. And us being on a reality television show, I know to the normal viewer, we're just some people on TV, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe we're actors, we're whatever. They don't draw in. I mean, we're not actors, we're real people, but they don't draw that in. They think that we just don't exist outside their TV screen. And I feel like the internet makes this really bad. I mean, people say whatever they want with no consequence on the internet. And I full-heartedly believe that they would never say that to our faces, and so much of it, I believe, comes from their own insecurities. Like, we're doing hard. We put ourselves out there. We auditioned for something. We earned our spot. Maybe it's something they want to do, but they're scared. Maybe it's something they have done and they didn't make it. I don't know. But the way that we get criticized can really be disheartening. I mean, they say a lot of really mean things.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times people think like, whether it's, a business or an individual, like you said, they don't believe you exist outside of that sphere. Like, you're not real. You're inside the TV and like, you don't read these comments.
Yeah.
They're just like fall into like dark space or something.
And it's probably better not to read the comments, but at the same time, you almost have to, because there are times when people say things that are just so blatantly not true that if you leave that sit out there, I mean, it could affect you.
Sure.
Like, it's like leaving a Yelp review for, like, let's say you go to a restaurant and you in particular find the food isn't quite to your taste, right? Mm-hmm. Well, taste is subjective. So it may not be to your taste, but I may really like it. And so if you go and you leave a Yelp review and you're like, the food had too much cumin in it. Okay, like, does that make it terrible? Is that worth leaving a review for? Maybe you can tell the chef, like, I feel like this has too much cumin for me. But I feel like the internet, it can hurt not only people, but also businesses quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think maybe my last question here about MasterChef. You were saying you're in with these other home chefs, with Gordon Ramsay, with all these other people. So how has that kind of community influenced your growth over these past 9 months?
So most of us are still friends, so we still kind of keep in contact. And I know just from watching the show, you can kind of see, I think, my progression from the beginning to where we are now. And Chef Ramsay especially really honed in on my confidence. And he spoke to me numerous times asking me, like, did I feel like I deserved to be there? And when I would be like, well, yeah, and he would say, do you see yourself as a front runner? And I would be like, well, I don't know. And he would tell me that, I need to have that confidence that I am good enough. And I think having somebody like Chef Ramsay, and, it's kind of sad that I felt like I needed that sort of validation, but having somebody like Chef Ramsay tell me that, you know what, your food is really good and you're good enough and you're a great cook, that just, it helped my confidence a lot.
Yeah. No, I think we can only all wish to have something like that where you just, feel that validation. But yeah, no, I think that's fantastic. And to have someone like him say that,
Yeah. I mean, he's got 17 Michelin stars. Yeah. And for the most part, he's not going to tell me it tastes good if it doesn't,
No, he's very, like I was saying, we were watching, the episode last night, which was the one pot, I think it was called One Pot Wonder, One Pan Wonder in a cast iron skillet.
Yep.
And I was watching it with my mom and she's like, they're mean.
Yeah, but it's how we learn.
Yeah, yeah.
And truthfully, I kind of liked it when they were mean because it's something that, like, my husband's not going to, well, he'll maybe tell me this, but like the normal person isn't going to eat my food and be like,
yeah,
this is just wrong, or this needs more of this. Mm-hmm. The normal person doesn't eat and say that. So it's really nice to have that and to learn, because when he would tell people that something was wrong, he would tell you why it's wrong. And typically they would also tell us how to fix it. A lot of that, unfortunately, isn't shown on the show. I wish that it was, because I think viewers would really like to see that.
Yeah.
But, time.
Yes. Time. So much is left on the floor.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So my final question for you is, what are next steps with you, with what you're doing in the community, what you're doing with your cooking and with your blog and, with your family? What should we expect from you in the future here?
Sure. So in the near future, I'm planning to do some pop-ups. They will probably be at Fig. once that opens.
Very
and
exciting.
I'm really excited about that. I'm going to be partnering with Eat With. They have a partnership with MasterChef. It's a really cool app. You can type in like any city in the world and it pulls up dining experiences.
Oh, cool.
So it's really a neat thing. So I plan to do some pop-ups, and I would also like to do, I've kind of tinkered with the idea of starting like a gourmet micro patisserie, maybe cookies.
We don't have that here.
We don't. And I think micro patisserie sounds so fun.
Yes.
and I mean, I have 2 young kids, so my life is kind of crazy right now. But I also found from MasterChef, and I didn't know this, like I said, I never had really thought of being on TV. I mean, truthfully speaking, I never like looking at myself anyway in pictures or on TV.
Yeah.
But I found that I really love TV. Like I love the whole process of it. I love, I loved it. So I don't know, maybe a little something down that route too. I don't know. In Rochester, I don't know that the options are very high for that kind of thing, but I don't know. We'll have to see.
I think there are a lot of opportunities out there.
Yeah,
and
it might turn into a YouTube channel.
I would say, yeah, it sounds like the perfect YouTube channel. And you've already gone through, the blogging and, connecting with, business opportunities that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, that sounds amazing.
Yeah. But for now, I think I'm mostly going to focus on these pop-ups that will be coming up. And hopefully some of my other MasterChef competitors will also come join me for some fun pop-ups.
That'd be super fun. Awesome. Well, I'll wrap up by asking you for any final thoughts and where people can find you online or in person.
Sure. I think my final thoughts would be chase your dreams. I mean, even if you think it's silly, even if you think there's absolutely no way this is going to happen for me. I mean, I'm proof that dreams can happen. Like there were 20,000 people that applied for MasterChef and I'm in the top 7.
Yeah, that's
dreams can come true. I'm a big believer in manifestation. If you believe it, you can achieve it. So just think about it and it can come true. You can find me on Instagram at Spiced Up Mom. I also have Facebook, Spiced Up Mom, and a blog by the same name as well, spicedupmom.com.
Awesome. And Wednesdays at 7.
Yes, Wednesdays, 8/7 Central on Fox here in Rochester, Fox 47.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing this. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much to Shari for sitting down and sharing her story with us today and her journey on her food blog and on MasterChef. So again, you can check out the latest episode of MasterChef and see Shari compete in the top 7 tonight at 7 p.m. on Fox. And there's also a special showing of the competition tonight at Fig starting at 6 p.m. So check it out. And you can also find Shari on Instagram at Spiced Up Mom and on her blog at spicedupmom.com. All right, that's a wrap for the podcast today. If you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe to the Rochester Rising podcast wherever you consume your audio content so that you never miss a story of innovation and entrepreneurship coming out of Rochester, Minnesota. We'll be back again next week with a brand new episode.